Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Ressinello going into the breach live Eastern time, 9 o'clock on Sunday night. We got a great lineup for you tonight, so we definitely want you to stick around for the whole conversation. We got men being women, women being men. Obviously, we know this is a problem, but not for Justin Castro. Justin Trudeau, because he says trans women are women. Joe Biden gives an award to a guy, all right, and calling him a woman, which is nuts. You got people resisting this, like in Hungary. So we have a conversation with the president, Mark Middendorf of Ave Maria University, where Katalin Novak recently gave a speech on Christians in politics. And then Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, shocking me with what he said on MSNBC. So Joe and I are definitely going to break that down. And finally, Mike Knowles basically getting banned from the University of Buffalo. This is going to be a great conversation. Stick around at the front line with Joe and Joe.
Rip the fig tree down. It's not bearing any fruit.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Ressinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. Disgrazia.
They will not allow Donald Trump to be president. This is the twisted mind of the left. You're putting a Band-Aid over a problem that's not being addressed. It's thrown around too liberally, hate speech. Just because your feelings are hurt doesn't mean it's hate speech. So there are issues here that cross political lines.
It means that your libtard friends are not going to invite you over for Grey Goose and Bob Wild.
If you think that America is about you, you're just fool.
I got to show you something that has me aggravated. You know, Joe Ressinello asked, if you think that this is all, anybody really cares about you, they don't. Obviously, most people, and listen, most sane people, and we're convinced here at the front line with Joe and Joe that there are many, many, many more sane people out there than there are insane people. Nonetheless, the insane people actually control the institutions right now, as Antonio Gramsci told them to over 100 years ago. But here's the thing. They're not on your side. When they tell you that trans women are women, they're lying. So they're not on your side. Because we all know that, men are men and women are women. Oof. Joe, I'm sorry, Joe. That might got us taken down. That might, because you say a man is a man and a woman is a woman. That's not a statement of religion. That's a statement of biology. Okay? You got Jill Biden. Or she's giving awards to a guy dressed like a woman on international. Joe, I got a headache. I'm going to hand it over to you so you can let everybody hear who's listening to us. So what did Trudeau say?
So let's go first to Justin Trudeau. This is what he said. And you guys could look it up. He has like an official statement out there. He basically said, "We reiterate today that trans women are women, and we will always stand up to hate whenever and wherever it occurs." Now, obviously, he's addressing the International Women's Day. We have a clip. We're going to play that. Jill Biden, they must have had a conference call. They all basically said the same thing, same messaging. I mean, ultimately, here's the deal. They're not living in reality, and it's an insult to women. It's a day to celebrate women, International Women's Day. It's an insult to every woman that bore a child. It's an insult to every mother that sacrificed for that child. It's an insult for every mother that took care of her family and sacrificed for her husband. It's just an insult. It's an insult to the feminists, Joe.
I was just thinking that.
Please, you talk about it.
And I was going to say, do you think that Gloria Steinem, do you think that she agrees with this? Now, I haven't heard any statement. I could be wrong. I haven't heard any statements from her. But that could be part of it where they're telling her, look, we know that you feminists disagree with this, but we all have the same political ideology, so you guys just shut up. Even if you disagree with it, just shut up. Maybe Gloria Steinem saw how Martina Navratilova was treated. Maybe Gloria Steinem saw how J.K. Rowling was treated. These are not conservative women. These are radical feminists. Martina Navratilova is a lesbian. A woman who loves other women or has sex with other women, okay? So they're not going for this. They're not going with Leah Thomas with his junk out in the locker room in front of Riley Gaines and all these other girls on the swim team. They're not going for that, but they're not opening their mouth, Joe. And silence in this case, silence, okay, means that you're complicit.
Well, they're feminists.
And it shows the feminists, Joe, And it shows that the feminists were never truly for women. They were for an agenda. They were for an agenda. And this is exposing them, by the way, which I think is a good thing.
I think you're 100% right. Silence is being complicit. And that's pointed directly at all people of goodwill because this is not reality. They always use science when it's convenient. Well, this is science. Every cell of your body has an X or a Y, XX, XY, male or female from the start. Science, you cannot change that. Irregardless of how you take chemicals, have surgery, it doesn't change. All that is the wrapping paper. This is the modern day lobotomy. I heard that explained by Father Dwight Longendecker. Basically, how, say 50 years ago, they lobotomized people. And now we look at that as horrendous. We're doing something that 50 years from now will be looked at as horrendous. And by the way, European nations that have been doing this are now distancing themselves from it. To be specific, France and Denmark. They've been doing, they were way ahead of us on this, and now they're distancing themselves from it.
Well, they're being honest. They're being honest.
Well, they're looking
and let me
at
tell you
the
something.
consequences.
Well, the thing is this: they're looking at the consequences, and again, their usual mantra is, no, it's all you religious nuts, which means traditional Catholics, okay, conservative evangelicals, Orthodox Jews, okay, observant Muslims, okay, who all of whom believe in the moral law, okay, who are against all this nonsense. They say it's all your fault that these people kill themselves. It's your fault that they suffer from depression. Okay. And in the meantime, they say, all right, well, how about this? The suicide rate amongst the LGBT LMNOP crowd in Sweden is higher than it is in America. And Sweden is very open-minded, a very open society when it comes to these issues. Okay. Yet they're pushing back, like you said, in other European nations saying, look, we're tolerant. And they are. They really are. I'm intolerant. I don't care. But I when somebody calls me intolerant, I say, yeah, I'm really intolerant of really crappy ideas. Okay, I don't like them. I'm going to fight against them, especially when those crappy ideas turn out to be blatant lies. Sweden's not shaming anybody. Sweden's not ostracizing anybody. People are seeing the consequences of going through this lifestyle, Joe, and they're killing themselves. And the left can't blame religious people anymore. Now, I mean, and it's gone now where it's got the rubber stamp. It's got the imprimatur of all these world leaders. So you got Justin Trudeau, as you pointed out, right? Biden's puppet master, meaning his wife, Jill, okay? The International Day of Women Award, whatever it is, okay? Play this clip, John. This way we can see the woman they're celebrating.
In Argentina, Alba Ruada is a transgender woman who was kicked out of classrooms, barred for sitting for exams, refused job opportunities, subjected to violence, and rejected by her family. But in the face of these challenges, she worked to end violence and discrimination against the LGBTQI+ community in Argentina. After women were barred from schools in Afghanistan.
Now I want to emphasize something to you, Joe Resinello. Okay. Now hear me on this. That woman's voice, okay, as Dr. Jill, whatever her name is, Biden, giving the award to this guy. He's kicked out of classrooms. He was refused job opportunities. He's discriminated against. That's a lie. That's a lie. I don't have to know this guy's history to know that that's a lie. You want to know why? Because who's doing the kicking out of jobs? They are, if you disagree with their agenda. Who's pulling kids out? Go look at the video of Ireland, where the family, I forgot the kid's name, and Colin maybe in the chat room, he can enlighten us. I forgot his name. He spoke out against the LGBT agenda in Ireland. He's got to stand trial. What's that?
Enoch Burke, I think his name is.
Enoch Burke. They dragged his family out in the street. They knocked his sister down in the street like she was a dog, the Irish cops. Who's hitting who? And I want to throw this over to you. I want everybody to understand this. This is why the veins popping out of my head. Please understand that when you talk about what they're talking about, which is hate speech, that means what Joe and I are doing right now. Because we're critical of them and their agenda, we're engaging in hate speech, which is violence Please understand this is leading to a legal end, which is not going to end well for us. Okay. They're going to have it enshrined in law that to say the words that to reflect reality, he, she, not birthing person, a mother, and all these different things. When you use the correct language, they want to be able to say under the law, it's violence. And how do you deal with violence? Well, if you're convicted of a violent crime, you go to jail. And that's precisely what they want. They want to be scared of us. Now, I'm not scared of anybody, all right, because I have Jesus and so does Joe. All right. But at the end of the day, these people, if you care about society and culture and your nation, okay, and your very life, they are the dangerous ones. And that's not hyperbole, Joe Rossinello.
There's no question. Look what Trudeau's doing to Canadians right now. I mean, they're
It's
just a little bit
insane.
they're a little bit ahead of us, but they mean business. When you're talking about freezing bank accounts, when you're talking about having a minister of truth, pay attention to the Canadian news. That's what he's talking about. That's basically going to deem what's misinformation and what's real information. All that information is information the government disagrees with. It's nothing more than that. And you're allowing the government to filter that. This is dangerous. And we've seen this in other societies. We saw it in Spain during the Spanish Revolution. We saw it in Mexico. We saw it in France. This is real, and it's happening on North American soil. It's happening at a very, very, very fast rate. And to Joe's point, the idea that they could basically couch a religious idea like traditional marriage under the guise of hate speech is a dangerous proposition to any person who is a Muslim, a Jew, or a Christian. It's
Right.
dangerous, and they mean business.
Well, what they try to do is obviously their goal is to persuade people who might not be well informed. And they say, you see those two Italian guys on that front line with Joe and Joe? Okay. They are the enemy. And somebody might say, well, they're just talking. Don't we have a right to freedom of speech? No, you don't. I tell anybody, go look at the hearings this week where Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger were dragged up in front of the House. Okay. Well, they weren't dragged. Let me rephrase that. Okay. They were invited by the Republicans, but their treatment by the so-called free press liberals, because remember something, Joe, the freedom of speech movement began at Berkeley, okay, back in the 1960s. This party, okay, that all these people belonged to back then, they are the opposite of free speech. That's why we're having this conversation here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Go and look at their treatment. Two guys who have been reporters for the last 20, 30, 40 years, they're called the one woman who's the ranking member on the committee. She called them so-called journalists. They're trying to press them for sources. All the things they say they're against. They were hammering these guys. Why? Because they let it out. They let out the truth that the FBI colluded with Twitter to silence the free speech rights of individual Americans like us. So if the old regime was still running Twitter, because we're live on Twitter right now. If the old regime was still running Twitter, we'd be taken down because Twitter colluded with the federal government. And guys like us would end up on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate list. Here, Joe, I want to throw something out to you. Why is it not an act of hatred, okay? An act of outright hatred to make a list of hate groups in America, 8 out of 10 of which are Roman Catholic individuals or organizations, Church Militant, Remnant, E. Michael Jones, Michael Voris, okay, Taylor Marshall, all these groups on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate group list, and that's allowed. They have no reason for it other than the fact that everybody I just mentioned stands up for traditional teachings of the Catholic Church, specifically on marriage and the family and sexuality. That's what makes them hate groups. That's terrible.
Well, Joe, I'll be honest with you. You can't have these conversations in polite company. I mean, we're talking science here. This is science. When you start calling a man that dresses up like a woman, science disagrees with you. Forget about religion. Clearly, religion disagrees with you too, but you can't say it. And to your point before, Joe, silence is complicity. Every single priest, every single bishop, every single baptized Catholic, baptized evangelical, baptized Protestant, go down the list, should be waving the flag of truth on this. This is incorrect. And frankly, you're not helping the person involved. The life expectancy of transgender people does not even reach the age of 40 years old
They'll
because
say it's your fault. They'll say it's your fault.
the surgery does not meet the expectation. Talk to some of the folks that have been involved in it. We've talked to a lot of people, Joe Pasillo and myself. We talked to a lot of people in the medical field on our show at Veritas Catholic Network. I'll repeat it once again. The surgery does not meet the expectation, and it leaves you empty. And that is why they are committing suicide.
Remember, one word I'm going to add to what you said. It leaves you empty and mutilated.
There
There's
you
no
go.
turning back. See, Joe, that's the despair that we pray these people don't get to, because there's always forgiveness, there's always healing, even unfortunately in their case, it's not physical healing because there's no turning back. But what they know is they're empty spiritually and they're mutilated. And that's what drives them. That's what drives them to despair, which leads to suicide. Not our fault. It's the doctors, so-called doctors, who did not inform them about what the consequences might be. Didn't tell them about the life expectancy because you're talking to a 16-year-old kid. I want to segue into something. I want to say this to you first. There was a town hall. I think it was a town hall, and Glenn Youngkin was confronted by what looks to be a boy, around a 16 or 17-year-old boy. And this girl, because it's in reality, biologically, it's a girl who looks like a boy. And obviously, this is a prop. The father's right there. God help this disgusting father who looks at his daughter very proudly that she's pretending that she's a boy. And Glenn Youngkin, see, this is where we got to get it through our heads as conservatives and stop being afraid to just speak the truth, even if you are talking to a 16-year-old confused girl. She said, "Look at me." This is what she said to Glenn Youngkin. Joe, she looks like a 16-year-old boy, all right, but it's a girl. She says to him, "Look at me. Do you think that the girls in the girls' locker room would be comfortable if I was in there?" And Glenn Youngkin went through this whole thing about, oh, we're going to add bathrooms. Glenn, here's what you say. Here's your response. It's a very simple one. Every girl in that locker room will feel very comfortable with you in there because they know you're a female of the species. So they don't care what you look like. Okay. The fact is they know you're a girl and they're not threatened. Next question. That's how you swat these. By the way, Joe, there's a little, we're going to get into some other things. There's one common thread, though, I do want to say, because I'm a little angry. I want to laugh a little bit. You get, on all these issues, they always get the most annoying teenagers. Do you ever notice that? Like they get the most obnoxious, annoying teenagers. I forgot the kid's name in Florida, the one who's anti-Second Amendment because he survived the school shooting. He's a little arrogant, I don't want to say it, but you know where I'm going with that. Greta Thunberg. So it's that kid, Mog, whatever his name is, okay, about guns. You got Greta Thunberg. How dare you? How dare you? She's 16. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, go have some hot chocolate. That's what you want to tell. Get out of here. This is for adults, Greta. All right. And now they got this kid. I guarantee this kid becomes famous. I guarantee this girl who confronted Glenn Youngkin, or supposedly, because she's a prop. The left uses props. They're great at it. All right. Political theater is their expertise. This girl is going to become famous. You mark my words. You mark my words. Joe, final thoughts on that.
Well, ultimately, it's sad. I'll be honest with you. I watched with my wife this past weekend, The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. What's his face? Rules for Radicals with Saul Alinsky.
Oh, Saul Alinsky.
It's just sad talking about basically the Kinsey reports. It is nothing short of sad. I woke up this morning. We were talking about it as we were driving to Mass. People have bought the lie, Joe. And here's the thing. The consequences mean business, and they're very real, and it's forever. And frankly, parents and adults are supposed to protect children, and we're not. We're not doing the job we've been tasked to do, and that is to guide children who frankly are misdirected on this issue, and it's a serious consequence, and it's for life, and it's sad.
No, and it really is. And the thing is, again, we have to remember we played a clip a few weeks ago of Giorgia Meloni. I got goosebumps when I watched it because she's speaking right to this culture where Giorgia Meloni, the new prime minister of Italy, for those of just joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, we're way in the breach. Remember, do us all a favor. Wherever you're seeing us, whether Twitter, whether Facebook, whether YouTube, okay, help us out. We don't ask you for money, okay? We're not, okay? But what we do ask you to do, share our videos. And by the way, along the lines of the videos, Joe Resinello has been hammering in general on tyranny, but specifically focused on the greatest example of tyranny right now, I think, and Joe thinks in the world, is Justin Trudeau. And Joe has been posting a lot of videos, getting a lot of views and a lot of attention in his own humorous Jersey way, okay, pointing out the dangers of the tyranny of Justin Trudeau, okay? And I highly recommend Joe's latest video, which is Ozzy Says It Best. You got to hear Joe Resinello doing his best impersonation of Ozzy. Now, here's the thing. Giorgia Meloni stepping up, the Polish government stepping up, Viktor Orban in Hungary. So the new president of Hungary is Katalin Novak, all right? And she's fighting against this nonsense is really what she's doing, okay? She's standing up to the oligarchs over there in Europe and trying to sway opinion, at least as far as her sphere of influence, which is Hungary. Well, Joe and I, had the honor of interviewing Mark Middendorf, who's the president of Ave Maria University, that just recently last week hosted Katalin Novak at Ave Maria to give a speech on this very topic, on the Christian in politics. That was the topic of conversation of her lecture, the Christian in politics. We want to play you this great interview with Mark Middendorf, okay? And then we'll come back and we'll keep the conversation going. All right, so like I said, let's jump right into it. Katalin Novak is the president of Hungary, newly elected president of Hungary. She's speaking at Ave Maria University. And we're very pleased and honored to have on Mark Middendorf, who is the president of Ave Maria University. Brief bio on Mark, because we want to get into the meat and potatoes and why this topic is important. Why are we talking about this? Mark is a Chicago native, educated at Northern Illinois University, holds a master's of business administration and finance from DePaul. He was a corporate manager and marketer, and then he followed a special call to found Lighthouse Catholic Media, which many of you have heard of. It's a lay apostolate that became the largest producer of Catholic audio talks on the planet before merging with Augustine Institute in 2015. Mark also served as executive vice president for mission expansion at Augustine Institute before becoming Ave Maria University's fourth president in February 2022. He and his wife, Christine, are the proud parents of 4 children. Mark Middendorf, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe.
Thank you, Joe and Joe. It's great to be here. Thank you for having us on your program.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. We're going to get started. So the audience, just so the audience knows, we're going to be discussing specifically the calling of the Christian in politics. What can we achieve? Now, this is a speech that's being given by the newly elected president of Hungary, Katalin Novak. Mark, let's jump in. But before we do, we're going to hand it over to you. We'll start with a prayer.
Great. Thank you, Joe. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, we ask that you send your Holy Spirit, give us wisdom and prudence and understanding in all that we do, and please guide our actions so that your will may be done, not ours, in all things. And we consecrate all of this to your blessed mother. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Joe Resinello, where do you want to start?
Well, first I want to say Mark's a Chicago guy. Mark, I'm a New York guy. We do better pizza, but you got us in the rib department. I wanted to just throw that in. I love your ribs in Chicago.
Well, on the pizza side, Tom Monahan may have something to say about that. Who did the best pizza when he started Domino's Pizza, which basically, if it wasn't for that, this university would not exist, since he personally has put in over $500 million building this university.
Wow.
Love it. Love it.
That's fantastic. See, that's a great example of what those who are successful and wealthy, can do. When people say, "Hey, how do you give back?" Found a university that's going to teach Christian values. There's a novel idea.
Yeah, that concept, it's really quite interesting with Tom. He was raised in an orphanage. A lot of people aren't aware of that. Grew up in some foster homes. Had a pretty tough beginning in life, I would say. found his way when he was in the Marines, in the military, and directionally on what he felt were the top 5 priorities of life, and then proceeded to build Domino's Pizza. And then when he sold it, he read Pope John Paul II's Ex Corde Ecclesiae, which was written on August 15th, 1990, which is Latin for "From the Heart of the Church on Catholic Universities," and then subsequently felt that was the best place to make a difference for the salvation of souls. And that's why he did what he did.
Well, God bless him. And we mean that. God bless him, because that is an awesome story. So let me ask you this. Joe, is it okay if I get it going?
Dive in, dive in.
All right. Here's the thing. We talk about on the show, Mark, all the time. Again, we don't want to overhype it. A seeming resurgence, or at least resistance, to the secularism that's been really, really running roughshod over particularly Europe. I mean, the entire world, really. But Europe, the basket of let's say, Western civilization, Christian civilization, Poland, okay? We saw the recent election in Italy, Giorgia Meloni. I'm very inspired by her talking about God and family and country, and these are good things. So now we have, and obviously Viktor Orban in Hungary. So we have Katalin Novak, newly elected president of president of Hungary, and she's given this speech. How is Hungary and others, let's say, but keep it with Hungary, an example to the Western world of how so important getting back to our Christian roots, how important that is? Because not just to thrive, but at least in the short term, to stave off the disaster that looks like that's already here, if not really right around the corner.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you have to go back to the history of Hungary to begin with. So history was founded in the year 1000, in the year of our Lord, by a Catholic saint, Saint Stephen. So its roots go back to that. And he was the founder and the first king of Hungary. And I would say he's probably a tremendous intercessor as well for Madam President and the work that she is doing and that country is doing. And I got a couple stats just to give your listeners a little perspective on the incredible change that they've done. And here's just a couple points. Hungary's government expenditures on families have risen from 3.5% in 2010 to 6.2% in 2022. And what's the big deal about that? Well, since then, their total fertility rate has grown from 1.25 to 1.56 during that decade, which is the highest growth in the entire EU. The number of marriages in Hungary has grown by 89%. The number of abortions has fallen by 40% over the last decade. And the last time there were fewer terminated pregnancies, abortions, in a year was 1954. I mean, that just shows you the progress they've made. And it's due to this focus on the family and that vision that I think was originally planted by St. Stephen with all in the fullness of Catholic principles back then. But today, with that focus on the family, has been a tremendous positive influence and benefit to the country. The other thing is she lives her faith out. She's quoted by, she does not start her day without reading the Bible. She is very outspoken pro-life wise, unabashedly. When her children were young, she took a few years off. She left what she was doing to raise her children, and then she went back into politics when they became teenagers. So, here's someone that's not just espousing the truth, but in her own personal life is living that out. And I think it's a great inspiration for other countries to follow and learn from. This focus on the family.
I think Mark Middendorf joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Mark's the president of Ave Maria University. If you're just joining us, we're discussing Katalin Novak's lecture at Ave Maria University, The Calling of the Christian in Politics. That's a naughty topic nowadays. You can't don't think you can just go up, and say what you want nowadays. We thought we had freedom of speech. When you give a speech like this, you're going to have a lot of enemies. I'm sure she does already. Joe Rossinello, where do you want to go?
Mark, when we talk to people like yourself, I sometimes try to step back as a listener. And someone could say, okay, she emphasizes faith and family. So what? I'm from New Jersey. That's what we say. So what? Well, I'm going to tell you so what. It's the foundational issue of everything. Everyone comes from a family. And to be honest with you, when you have that break, something breaks within a society and in the individual. That's why this is so important. Our politics, we're missing it, Mark. We're pointing to all the other peripherals. This is the issue. Why is it the issue?
Faith lives upstream of politics. I think that is at the heart of it all. The church is not political. The church isn't conservative or liberal, as often they talk about it in those terms. It's orthodox. It's right reasoning. It's the truth. So, you know, in that document that we were talking about a little bit earlier, Ex Corde Ecclesiae, our Holy Father, Pope John Paul II says, and he's talking about Catholic universities, but he says, a Catholic university's privileged task is to unite existentially two orders of reality, the search for truth, and here's the kicker, and the certainty of already knowing the font of truth, which is the church. You cannot separate those things. So faith, as I said earlier, lives upstream of politics. It lives upstream of culture. If you want to change politics, if you want to change culture, it starts with faith, and it starts with the family.
Absolutely. I mean, and this is one of the things that frustrates Joe and I in America. Now, look, Mark, we'd be lying if we said we didn't talk about political issues. They are important. Okay. The culture war is important, but ultimately it all means nothing if we don't have something foundational, and not just a thing. Faith, Christian values. Okay. Even if you're not a Christian, the values are universal. In other words, if people want to, Joe says on the show all the time, if you think secularism is working out for, let's say, America or Europe, go look out the window. That's all you need to do. Mark, let's talk about pushback. Obviously, Europe has been on a suicide mission for, I don't know, I mean, we could say for a very long time now, or at least a century, if not longer, going back to, let's say, the middle of the 19th century with Marx, Nietzsche, everything else. So what is the pushback against, let's keep it with Hungary. I mean, I know it pertains to Poland and Italy also. Let's keep it with Hungary, with Katalin Novak, with Viktor Orban. What's the pushback from the EU to, let's say, ideas like this in this battle that's going on?
Well, I think some of the pushback, the root of it stems from the United States and its influence in the EU and other countries as well, in its policies, especially its pro-abortion policies and things like that. And they've been, I think, a very good bulwark and standing in the breach and not caving into some of those pressures. But, you know, I think Archbishop Fulton Sheen, who's one of my favorites, he said in the early 70s, he said, we are at the end of Christendom, not of Christianity, not of the church, but of Christendom. And what he meant by Christendom, he said, Christendom is economic, political, social life as inspired by Christian principles. That is ending. We've seen it die. That was in the early 70s. I can't even imagine what he would say today in light of that. But I think all countries, and especially Hungary, it's no different, they're going to have those same pressures. And because they're the political, the economic, the social life, the further they get away from Christian principles, the tougher it is to stand up and truly try to live those out from a political perspective.
Absolutely, and obviously Hungary is you know, Katalin Novak, you know, Viktor Orban. They're trying to do this. You laid out the stats. I mean, and obviously, if you keep the pedal to the metal, those stats are just going to keep looking better and better and better. Whereas I think his father or Frank Pavone said, you know, obviously we don't want to make abortion illegal. We want to make it unthinkable. Well, the more you emphasize the Christian values in a society, abortion, using that as an example, the main thing, becomes unthinkable. It's something we don't do. We build families. We don't wreck them. Joe Resinello.
Mark, I want to talk about the title of the lecture, The Calling of the Christian in Politics, What We Can Achieve. You're teaching young people. They're going to go out into the world. I went to a Catholic university. I actually studied political science. I'm in the world, okay? Is it possible that the Catholic can basically go into a career of politics in America, because obviously people have to vote for them. And if it's possible, would anyone listen? Now I'm going to give you an example. As a Catholic, contraception's a no-no. Say that amongst Catholics. Contraception's the beginning of abortion. Marriages have to be open to life. You say that in a lot of churches. Catholics, amongst Catholics, they think you're crazy.
You
Mark.
say that at CPAC, they'll think you're nuts.
They think you're crazy. So to be authentically Catholic, I remember when Rick Santorum ran. He had 7 kids. He had a child that has Down syndrome. I walked behind him at the March for Life. No chance of being the president in this country. Zero. John Kennedy basically through his words said, yeah, I'm Catholic, but you know something? The Pope's words, whatever. He basically said that. Can you do it?
I think you can do it, but I think it's you're not going to enact the change just politically. It has to start with the formation. If you look at how especially, I can speak towards the United States because I'm a citizen here. Where did it start to erode? If you look at the universities and the teachings of the universities, I think that's where it started. That's why why did Pope John Paul II come out with Ex Corde Ecclesiae in 1990? In fact, if you go back to, and I'll quote Sheen again, 1955, it's a YouTube video, you can Google it out there. Sheen says, and this is 1955, he says, in this impassioned, incredibly prophetic talk on education, he says, the independent small Catholic college and university will show us the way. It will illuminate the path for America, and I would add Hungary, in order that America may continue to love its God, to preserve its soul and its love of truth, the truth of forming the whole person. And then and only then will it be truly great before both God and before man. And what Pope John Paul II did many years later when he did Ex Corde, he says right in Ex Corde Ecclesiae, he says, without any doubt, Catholic universities are essential for the growth of the church and Christian society. I mean, those are incredibly strong words. And so, like for here at Ave Maria University, you might be saying, well, can one man or one woman really make that big of a difference? And I'd agree with you, one man or one woman can't make that big of a difference by themselves. But a man or woman properly formed, both their intellect, their love of truth, and their will, their love of God, while having deeply discerned their God-given gifts and their mission God is calling them to in this life, fully consecrated to our Blessed Mother and being a fit instrument in her hands, well, I think that's an entirely different story. I think that person can move mountains. That person can be a fountainhead of renewal for the church. That person can be a beacon of light in the darkness. And that's what we're trying to do here at Ave Maria University, to be a fountainhead of renewal for the church in following those principles and being fully consecrated to our Blessed Mother. So I think if we want to change politics, we have to start at the universities. And right now, unfortunately, of the 221, 225, depending on how you count things, Catholic universities in the United States, only 15 of them adhere to these principles in Ex Corde. 15. Of those 15, only 8 of them are actual universities, which means they have a master's program or above, and only two universities left in the country that are on that list offer a doctoral program in theology. We're one of 2. And why is that important? Well, who do you think's teaching at the seminaries? Who's teaching the future priest? It's people that are, you gotta have your doctorate. But it's nothing's impossible for God. Our biggest day here at the university is the Feast of the Annunciation. It's that day we ask the entire town of Ave Maria, Florida, to renew or make their consecration. We invite all of our students, parents of the students, faculty, staff, board members to make or renew their Marian consecration. And on that day, I think the angel Gabriel said something so profound in Luke that should give us hope. And the angel Gabriel said, with God, nothing is impossible. So when people get discouraged and they're wondering, how is this going to change? I think you have to rely on that hope that with God, nothing is impossible. And send your kids to Newman guide type schools like Ave Maria University, because their minds are going to be formed, both the intellect and their will, both preparing them for the secular world, if that's where they're called to go, but also for their primary purpose which is to get to heaven for the salvation of their soul.
Absolutely. Mark Middendorf is joining us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. He is the president of Ave Maria University, and we are discussing Katalin Novak's lecture later today, which is entitled The Calling of the Christian in Politics, What We Can Achieve. Katalin Novak is the newly elected president of Hungary. Mark, we only have a couple minutes left. Let me ask you this. Yeah, if you're going to teach Christian values, authentic Christian values, you're going to have to teach young people that you're going to have to live a life of sacrifice. Now, God, in his wisdom, has given us an easy way to sacrifice, okay? Get married, have kids. You naturally have to sacrifice. You don't even have to go out of your way, all right? Joe's got 5 kids. I have a foster son. I hopefully be adopting soon. It's part of the institution. You're going to sacrifice, okay? It's right there. How do you sell that to a 20-year-old in the midst of this culture, in European culture? We're talking about Hungary. I'm sure they're going through the same thing with pornography, overindulgence, all of it. Okay. How do you successfully sell that to a 20-year-old?
Right. I think it starts with a solid foundation and understanding of church teachings, especially in the form of redemptive suffering, and also Christ's way. What was his way? His way is the cross. So if you follow his way, if you are going to be a Christian, you are going to have to embrace the cross, but embrace it in a loving way, and be accepting of whatever the crosses Christ sends us, and with our eye on eternity. I think a lot is bearable if you understand why you're doing this. Why do you exist? I mean, how many people go through their entire lives never really knowing why they exist? Why did God create them? What were their unique gifts that only they could fulfill? That they were created for a specific purpose, that if they don't really discern that well, their life won't have the meaning. But if they do, their life will have joy. It's joy. Down here at Ave, we call it Ave Joy. And it's that joy in the cross, and you'd have to experience. I think, if you have listeners out there that are thinking, well, where do I send my student to college? I can speak as a parent. I've been supporting this university since it was just a tomato field over 20 years ago. And I was still in the corporate world then. And I remember making my first donation to this university when I got a solicitation. And I thought to myself, well, maybe some of my kids will go to this university. At that time, we just had 2. My oldest at that time was 4. My next was 2. And I thought, well, maybe he'll come here. Well, he graduated at Ave in 2020 with a theology. And the friendships that he made here, these guys are going to help get each other to heaven. And that's my primary vocation. I mean, I invested because I sent all my kids to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, this type of thing. I invested a significant amount of time and money in that formation, plus what I did at home. I didn't want it to be gone when they go to a college, which is basically what happens. But yet at Ave, and why I've recommended Ave my entire life to all those that asked me when I was at Lighthouse or Augustine Institute, where should I send my kids? I'd say Ave Maria University. There's no place like it on earth. And my other daughter is graduating this year in nursing. I have another daughter that's here, that's a sophomore. There's just a joy here that they will find. So bearing the cross, to take the stand, to do the hard work, to get involved in this great country, I think is a duty for all of us here. But it requires a firm foundation, a good foundation, a solid foundation, and understanding of what God is calling you to do personally.
Absolutely. Mark, we have to go, but in a quick minute, Katalin Novak's lecture. That's today at Ave Maria University, The Calling of the Christian in Politics, What We Can Achieve. Where is that going to, where can our audience find that are you going to post it on social media? Where can people find it?
Yeah, we're having it recorded, and then we will post it up on our website as well in our YouTube channel. So if you just go to avemaria.edu, it will be out there. So, and I would just like to thank both yourself, Joe and Joe, both of you. just for the incredible work that Frontline does, for being a voice out there where there are so few voices that give universities like ours a chance to speak out and promote like an event like that's going to happen today. And this is the first time in the history of Ave Maria University where a foreign head of state is visiting. And we had not long ago, right before the election, Governor DeSantis spoke at our campus.
Okay.
So it's just, we are blessed here, especially with politics down here in Florida, with so many great individuals that are supportive of the work that we do.
Absolutely. Mark Middendorf, thank you so much for coming on the front line with Joe and Joe, president of Ave Maria University. All you parents out there, check out Ave Maria University. Thank you so much, Mark. You're welcome back at the front line anytime, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. God bless you guys.
God bless you. So obviously what you're looking at there, Joe Resinello, and all of you joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe, the topic of that conversation that Kathleen Novak, the lecture that she was giving at Ave Maria, was the Christian in politics. We want to show you a clip. I want you to take off your political hat for a second. Please listen to the content of this conversation on MSNBC with the mayor of New York City. Again, leave the politics aside for a second. The mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. John, run the clip.
I want to ask about some comments that you made at an interfaith breakfast this week. I want our viewers to listen to it.
Don't tell me about no separation of church and state. State is the body, church is the heart. You take the heart out of the body dies. I can't separate my belief because I'm an elected official.
One of the biggest
Boom!
things, right? That was mic drop moment right there. Boom is right. Now, I would never in a million years vote for Eric Adams, but I want to take off my political hat here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Discuss that for a second. That's a Catholic idea. I forgot who said it. Somebody out there could remind us who said the church is to the or however he phrased it. The body is the state and the church is the heart. He's right. He's right. Because what the left, and I forgot her name on MSNBC or CNN, she's nauseating, just like all other CNN hosts. But here's the thing. The teaching is very simple. The Pope is not going to be the president, and the president's not going to be the Pope. That's the separation of church and state. But what they're trying to do, and this is where I want you to go with it, Joe Resinello, is what they're saying, what they're really saying, and why Eric Adams caused controversy with that is they're saying you can't bring your worldview into your political views. You have no right to bring it into the public square or have influence over legislation based on your Christian values. And that's the dangerous part. Because what they're saying basically is, even if if you and I were congressmen, God forbid, but if you and I were congressmen, okay, that we can't vote along the lines of our Catholic values and Catholic teachings when we're weighing legislation. That has to be left out. You have to look at it from a completely secular point of view. Joe, that's nothing but BS is what that is.
Well, the left has always got the church and state argument wrong, and frankly, so has this country. When I say they got it wrong, they're not looking at it from the idea of the founders. The founders did not want to eliminate faith. They just wanted to say that the state couldn't set up a religion that got forced upon the people. That's it. It wasn't trying to eliminate religion. And that's what the left is trying to do in America. And the people say, well, what are you talking about? You could say, no, they want you to practice your religion in your house. And Eric Adams is basically saying, listen, I'm a Christian. Everything I do comes from that foundation. And as a Catholic, everything I do, everything I say, whether it's in church or out of church, in work, in my home, in the street, goes through my Catholic filter. And if that's not the situation for Catholics out there, we have to rethink that. We have to pray on that. We have to work on that. Kudos to Eric Adams, because I'll tell you this, and Joe and I were talking about this before the show. Republicans don't even say what he
No,
just
you're right.
took
You're right.
a lot of guts. Did you see that woman's face?
Yep.
This is the type of statement that makes them shiver. And I give him a lot of credit, tip my hat to him. And frankly, more people professed Christians should say the same thing. He's spot on.
But Joe, here's the problem: is that Christians in American politics, okay, are always playing defense. They need to remember, yeah, you could have the 1985 Bears, but you also need Tom Brady on the offensive side of the ball. All right, throwing for first downs and touchdowns, okay, and getting Super Bowl rings. You stop playing defense. We do have an awesome defense. We could defend. Let's keep it with Catholics and Christians in general. We could defend Christianity, no problem whatsoever. We could address this argument of church and state, not even a problem. But we never go on offense. Why is nobody asking her who made atheism or secularism the default position of the United States of America? Who ever said that other than the left, other than the radical left? They're the ones who wanted to kick religion out of politics. And by the way, because we get educated on these things, or sometimes we inform our audience members who might not know something. That letter to the Danbury Baptist that was written by Thomas Jefferson, all right, talking about the wall of separation between church and state. I wish somebody would point out to the idiot liberals, okay, that was to assure them that the state wouldn't encroach on the church, not the opposite way around. That had nothing to do with the church getting involved in politics. That had to do with the state encroaching on the rights of the church. That's what that was. So I get tired of them and twisting things. I'm not leaving my Catholic values at home. My Catholic values inform my worldview. Your atheism, your secularism inform your worldview. Let's see how it works out. That's why there's debate. I'm not afraid of debate. Are you, Joe? I know you're not. They don't want debate on this issue because they'll lose. You can't tell me that I have to keep my Christianity at home. And if I'm a congressman, what? I got to vote for abortion on demand up to the moment of birth? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Because that's, I think, what they're trying to do, Joe. Joe, you got the final word on that.
Priority in everything, because ultimately that's how we're going to be judged. God doesn't care about your job. He doesn't care about your degrees. He doesn't care about your money. And too many people are afraid, Joe. Like I always say, they want to be invited to the barbecue. It's about time that people of goodwill basically put it out there. Listen, this is who I am. This is who I am. I am a Catholic. I am a Jew. And this is what I believe. And here's the deal. We can agree to disagree.
Right.
I have friends who are Jewish. I have friends who are secular, and they're still my friends. We're going to agree to disagree. I could still be your friend. It doesn't work the same way towards us. You're a hater.
No, you're a
You're
hater. And you're not invited to the cocktail party.
I'm very tolerant of you. I'm actually, believe it or not, trying to help you. I'm trying to help you. And here's the deal. The proof is in the pudding. It's not working, America. Your choices are not bearing good fruit.
That's right. And we have to keep saying it. You know who else is saying it? Who's now on the hate list, I'm sure, is Michael Knowles. I'm glad we have a few minutes to get to this. John, run the clip because he's another guy who's a hater.
We understand that protest will begin shortly here. A number of police agencies already on scene. Obviously, UB Police, but Sheriff, State Police, and others also here now. And they are here. They'll be able to be the protesters off to the side of Sleeman Hall, Slee Hall as it's called here right now. And they will be basically protesting the appearance of the conservative commentator Michael Knowles, who will be off, and they'll be off to the side of the entrance here to make their case. Since the comments of Knowles at the Conservative Political Action Conference last weekend, he's reported to have said transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. Opposition has been building to his appearance for those comments. He was invited by a student group known as Young Americans for Freedom, which says all should be allowed to hear and even question his viewpoints.
So what was his said? First of all, that clip goes on. They show the conservative young student, man, and that little troll who was sitting at that desk. They show her the typical argument: you're doing violence against me. You're doing violence against me. Mike Knowles is not doing violence against anybody. Mike Knowles is a very loving individual, okay? From everything I see, that's all he ever does is try to express the truth. I saw his interview with, I forgot her name, Bronte. She's a real radical feminist. She's into the transgender. She asked questions like, why don't you use pronouns? What's the problem? He was very charitable there, much more charitable than I would be. Let me not speak for you, Joe. I couldn't be charitable to her. But the thing is, Mike Knowles basically said something that we all know. He said in public life. He did not say individuals. Now, we don't need to defend him. His own words at CPAC defend him. They're lying about it. In fact, there was a retraction, I believe, from Rolling Stone magazine.
There was.
They
They
ran
Their
ahead.
lawyers know better.
That's right, because they know that he did not say transgender people need to be eradicated from society. That would be a sin. And Mike Knowles is Catholic. He takes sin very seriously. What he said was the truth. Transgenderism as an idea, which is really just a lie. It's what we talked about in the first segment. It's a lie. Men are men, women are women. There's no such thing as transgenderism. Needs to be eradicated from public life. That means laws don't have pronouns. Laws do not have a third bathroom or a third locker room. No law should have be informed at all by this warped, perverted, twisted ideology, Joe Rossinello. And I am intolerant of it. Yes, if you want to call me intolerant, I am intolerant of lies and really, really bad ideas.
Ultimately, if you care about the individual, you will be against the transgender movement because it's a killer. To reiterate what we said at the beginning of the show, it does not itch the itch. It does not meet the expectation, and that is why the suicide rate is high. It causes damage. If you care about the individual, you will not affirm someone in making a horrendous, lifelong decision. And that is just what it is. And doctors, up until very recently, were saying exactly what I'm saying now, and now you can't say it because the culture has strong-armed the science. Do you want doctors who are social activists? I'll speak for myself. I don't. I want them to be scientists. Doctors should be scientists. And the science says that there are two genders. And that people who make this choice, many of them regret it. And many of them destroy themselves. And if you love them, you will speak out against this movement. All people of goodwill.
All people of goodwill have to come together on this, okay? But again, Joe, I mentioned offense and defense earlier. I'm tired of being on the field. I'm Mike Merriweather, or excuse me, I'm Mike Singletary, on the 85 Bears. I'm a really good linebacker, but I'm tired of being on the field. The offense has to get me off the field so I can catch my breath. We need to go on offense on this. They need to have the screws put to them, and they need to cite the studies that they always seem to say, well, you're not following the science. You're ignorant, Joe and Joe. You don't really know the science. Well, show me the science. Show me the studies that rival Paul McHugh at Johns Hopkins University. I could cite a study for you that talks about this as a disorder, as a psychological problem for which we have to pray for these people, and we have to help them in any way we can, materially and otherwise. I'm tolerant of people. I'm not, if somebody who's gay or transgender is praying the rosary in church, I'll sit down right next to them and pray with them and for them. And I hope they pray for me. I tolerate them as people. I don't tolerate their very, very bad ideas. Joe Rossinello, this was an important conversation. By the way, everybody out there, just want to give you a couple things. We don't ask for money, Joe and I. What we do ask you to do is wherever you're following us, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Frontline TV, primarily Frontline TV. We're doing very, very well there. So we ask you to help us out. Just do a click, share, like, subscribe, all of that, follow on Twitter. Please help us out in that way. That's all we could ask for. It's really helping. You're really, really helping us, by the way, because we're feeding the algorithm and we're starting to get some real traction. One of the main reasons why I encourage you all out there, whether you're American or Canadian, Joe has been doing a series these last 3 weeks on Justin Trudeau. Yes, somewhat sarcastic. Yes, somewhat funny. Please check out his Ozzy Says It Best video because it's fantastic. Okay. But he's pointing out truthful things about what's going on in Canada. And remember something, it's happening here too. Joe Rossinello, that was a great conversation. Thank you all for out there for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, going into the breach Sunday nights, 9:00 Eastern time. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.